Welcome to Backstory and Beyond. My name is John Daniel, and I'm humbled to be your host. But I'm thrilled to be here with Mr. Lakmal Walawage, who is a partner in the intellectual property team at Edwin Co LLP, a leading, globally focused, London-based law firm, which is proudly a B Corp. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming in. Such a pleasure to have spent some time with you and listening to who you humbly but confidently are. It hits me at the heart, man. Let me describe a little bit about what this show is all about. Mm-hmm. It really is about helping people become their best. Mm-hmm. And we look at human things like calling, mm-hmm. purpose, mm-hmm. peak human potential, if there is such a thing, and service to other people. We try to make this meaningful and relevant mm-hmm. to our audience, which is worldwide. Mm-hmm. And I think key here is you, sir, are a wonderful person to share your story. And as it's called, Backstory and Beyond, I want to start with your backstory. Tell us about where you were born, where you come from, mm-hmm. the circles of support that are there, your education, the whole 9 yards, and then we'll go into your firm. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, John. A privilege to be here with you on Backstory and Beyond. Chance to sort of share my story with you, and I'm in an esteemed company, so great to be here. About myself, story starts kind of in Sri Lanka. I was born in a place called Kandy in Sri Lanka. It's a hill town right in the center of the country. Mm-hmm. I was born to two lawyers who practiced themselves. My mom took a break while she was raising us in her practice, but rejoined her practice again when we became adults. They were the first people to go to university in my family, but also practicing law in Sri Lanka looks a bit different to practicing law in London. It's less commercialized. They work for themselves. There's less of a steady income, and it's more sort of. It is very people-based because mm-hmm. there were many moments I know my parents took on cases without charging any fees because the claimants or defendants couldn't afford that. And they stretched over many. I mean, I specialize now in my practice very, very specifically in a niche area. My parents, they practice all types of law because that's the way it kind of functions with chambers being sort of sole practitioner chambers. They will take on various different types of legal work, including family and criminal and the whole lot. Because of my parents sort of being in the position that they were in, the generation before was more countryside-based. My grandfather was, on my father's side, was a traditional healer, an Ayurvedic doctor, and my grandmother on that side was mostly managing the home at the time. And if I go a bit further back, there's an interesting history of. I mean, Sri Lanka has a way to go, as with any other countries in gender equality, but it has had the first female prime minister in the world, Sri Bandaranaike, when she came in. So there were opportunities, I think, for women at all times. And mm-hmm. in the 50s, my great-grandmother ran the first private bus company in Sri Lanka. So there's a tradition of entrepreneurship and business within the family as well. But no, I was privileged to be able to go into a good education there. I went to an international school, which is not an opportunity that all Sri Lankans get. And it meant that I was educated in English from the outset. So I can speak my native tongue. I'm singular. I can read it. I can write it. That's because my parents still instilled the importance of that at home, the importance of that to identity and communication. But English is strangely, being from Sri Lanka, my first language. So I, went through preschool and primary school and senior school learning in English and actually doing the exams of the English exam, British exam board, EdXL, because it was an international school. So I trained at that school to do my GCSEs and my A levels, and then when I was 18, applied for university in the UK. Got a place at Yorkshire-based University of Leeds. Bit of a shock when I first got there. I grew up in a tropical country. Sun goes down every day at 6:30. It's warm. It's nice. I got there in sort of September, October, starting to realize that there's going to be a long winter coming. And then when winter hit, it was dark until 9 in the morning. It was dark again at sort of 3 in the afternoon. Had to
shock.
Really adapt to that. I remember sleeping a lot in those first months. I'd go to lectures, finish my lectures, come back, and I'd be absolutely exhausted because I think it was the light and the changes in the climate. But yeah, I did my undergraduate in law at Leeds. I always had an interest in technology. I grew up in that generation that when we started life, we were still not that digitally advanced as you see now with kids coming through. I probably had a dial-up internet connection when I was about 10 or 11. And then from there, things moved really, really quickly. I always had my eye on law. I did my work experience when I was doing my O-levels or my GCSEs in law. I also did some work experience in other industries, including chefing. Yeah, I did. I always had my eye on law as the main sort of career that I would like to build and go into. But technology was a big part of that realization as well. So when I was at university and I came across the course in intellectual property, I thought, here's a place that I can merge these two interests, and the law is always playing catch up to technology. Technology is super fast. You can see, how AI has developed over the last few years. Obviously, AI development has been going on for a long time, but the development that hits the headlines, if you compare where we were a year ago, it's just gone so quickly. So the law is always playing catch up. It's never going to be simultaneous. But IP, at least the way I saw it, was the field that keeps in touch with technology or tries to keep up as much as it can, probably the most. So when I went into my third year of university, I decided, I'd like a career specifically in IP law. This is a fairly sort of the route is not as conventional because the conventional route to law in the UK, at least, to qualify, is to go into a full-service law firm, get your training contract there,
right,
and train at various different departments doing various different types of law, and then you might choose to specialize a bit later on. I kind of turned that around and wanted to specialize from scratch, so I applied to a boutique IP firm, only did IP. So my training was 3 seats, and the 3 seats were contentious IP, non-contentious IP, and IP agreements. So there's no getting away from IP and during that training contract. But it really, served me well because I was able to engage in the practice much earlier on. Even as a trainee solicitor, I was able to sort of advise clients and engage with clients and act on some really great cases. It's a boutique law firm called Virtuous Legal that it does really well in terms of going up against big hitters and being in the right places, being in the Court of Appeal or the High Court. So it really set me up. And then from there, I moved to a national firm, moved on to become at one point the head of intellectual property at that firm. And finally, I've arrived at Edwin Co, which is my current firm, and has a great IP practice, a big IP group with fantastic colleagues. And as you said, is a B Corp, and matches some of the values that I'd like to keep central to my practice.
Tell the audience what it means to be a B Corp.
So being a B Corp is you are part of a certification system and a community of global businesses that want to do business better and do it for a wider good. And whilst profit can be a focus, it's not the only focus. And there are metrics that measure your environmental impact, your social and societal impact, your impact on your own workers. And this stuff is all published. You can go on the B Corp's website, search engine, search any of the members with a certification and see their scoring on all of it. And it's not a simple thing. We get audited every 3 years for it. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to get that certification. And it shows the commitment that B Corp members have to maintaining that certification and those values within the business.
Absolutely. And so a couple of reflections on what you just said, that being a B Corp means that you're a concerned citizen and that you care about the people you're serving, the communities that you're in. This is a wonderful thing. I want to connect this to your backstory. I mean, your grandmother, your mother and father, all of the things that I heard, I understand to be circles of support and helping you become your best. That's what Backstory and Beyond is all about. That there are people out there, there are circumstances that help you rise to the level of being part of a B Corp and stand proudly. And as you spoke about being a B Corp, your chest was out. You were saying it with pride, and I think that's really, really important in this process. Tell us about your responsibilities a little bit more in detail. And I know you spoke about intellectual property at the organization.
So my day-to-day responsibilities, I'm mainly a contentious intellectual property lawyer. So about 70% of my work is sort of IP disputes. That's supporting clients who may have found that a third party has used their IP without their authorization. That might be a trademark, a brand, you see counterfeits, or it might be copyright infringement, where someone's used media without permission.
Let's hold there for a minute. So that in this world of AI, where does that put you at in terms of this contentiousness, or however you like to describe it?
I think it puts IP lawyers in a very complicated position. It's all, of course, very new. AI development has been going on for a long time, the definition of AI can be wide. But if we're talking generally about generative AI, there's been a lot of sort of movement in the law, but it's a state of flux at the moment. And it's a state of flux between the various jurisdictions as well.
Do me a favor, for our audience. Define generative AI.
So generative AI is, some of the more popularly known forms of AI. So things like ChatGPT, platforms which are used to put a prompt in, and they are sort of trained in the back end to be able to gather information from a data set that's made available to them, and generate new work, as opposed to being adaptive, or amending, or analyzing. It creates an output, which it generates itself by way of the training that it's undergone on its data set.
Generative AI would be these vignettes I might see on Instagram or Facebook or wherever it might be that has a coach of a football team saying things he or she should not be saying.
Yeah.
Using 4-letter words.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because our audience relates to that. And
yes.
It gets to a point where that's got to be phony.
Yeah.
But it's out there, and I'm curious, how do you mitigate that from happening from a legal perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult at the moment, right? Because trust in traditional media has lowered. People use alternative means to obtain their facts and their information, particularly social media and forums as such. And generative AI is allowing people to create things and use people's faces and put further disinformation out there if that's what the users of this technology want. Obviously, the technology, I don't know if there's a saying in technology that technology is neutral. I think there are. That has been investigated and probably it can't be said to be an absolute truth, but obviously the users of the tech is important. And I think when we're in an age somewhat of misinformation, and you are looking through social media for your facts about the world, it can be difficult to sift through what is real and what isn't, and it's getting harder and harder with AI.
Fact versus fiction.
Yes.
Is it information really, or is it misinformation,
Yes.
or is it disinformation?
Absolutely.
And I guess from a legal perspective, that gives you some homework to do, some research to do.
Absolutely.
And in our conversations previously, and I just want you to expound upon them so our audience can hear them. And you just said it a moment ago. It isn't easy to grab on to a perpetrator of piracy, and utilizing other people's material. But just give us a taste of that.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be similar issues, as you say, with piracy. It can be really difficult to find, especially in the internet age where these things are sort of borderless. It could be a server somewhere in a different country, but it's broadcasting on in the territory that you would otherwise be licensing others to show these broadcasts in, and that makes it really difficult because the IP regimes will be different between countries. The practicalities of enforcement will be different between countries as well. And I think we discussed when we chatted about when we were talking previously that even in the most sort of good forum to bring these sorts of actions in, like the UK, things are so much in real time. If you broadcast a football game that is pirated, by the time you've taken action, unless you get wind of it somehow beforehand, but that rarely happens. For a current broadcast, if it goes out and it's pirated, the horse is bolted by the time you've realized.
Right.
Even if you get an interim injunction, and this is assuming, of course, that you know who the defendant is, which in the world of VPNs and cloud servers, that can be really difficult to find as well. So you need good collaboration between stakeholders. You need good teams. You need good investigators, for example, to be able to find where something is. You need cooperation from ISPs who have, probably some of the best powers to be able to shut down a broadcast and provide information on where a broadcast is coming from. And you need, a good team that understands, a good legal team that understands your objective with things, and to be able to work to those objectives and reach them in the quickest and most cost-effective ways possible. It's a time that there's a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty, obviously, as we know, can be bad for business. So it's about navigating these things in the best way possible.
Well, one salient point is that the public and the media needs to be taught to learn about how the law impacts. But there's a bigger point here that you just said. There's a need for a collective impact group.
Yes.
That is, if you part of the ecosystem, so that whether it's a citizen saying this is not real, or it's a government saying we have to find ways to penalize people who are stealing other people's material, and maybe even make some money on it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a cash cow there we don't know about. Yeah. But I think these things are important. And so it brings me to a point relative to community interaction. Is there anything you're doing, and if you're not, it's okay, to share with the public in public forums or online from the company or yourself in terms of dealing with nonprofits? How do you share with the public why all those challenges are relevant and meaningful to them, and how they can play a role in stopping some of this?
Yeah, I think part of the part of the issue, and a big central part of the issue, is that there are so many concerns with AI, right? There's sort of concerns about job security and replacement of humans in work that some of the stuff like IP might be a bit sidelined in that discussion.
I got you.
And it might not be in the front of the minds of members of the public that they could have, particularly when we're talking about segments of the public like creators and artists or anyone in a creative role, really. They might not fully be settled on how it all works, and neither are the lawyers, to be honest, because this is a area that's changing so quickly. There's stuff going on in the US, there's stuff going on here. You hear big lawsuits like Anthropic came to a settlement recently, which was actually rejected by the court. In the UK, there's sort of cases going through the court as well. This summer, we had a case involving Stability AI and Getty. And the EU has, obviously brought out its AI Regulation Act, but is still, tinkering around the edges of that as well. So for us, it's about keeping on top of what is going on and trying to convey that to our audience in a sort of understandable and sort of non-jargon using way through seminars and written articles, where we can, and keeping people updated on the changes that are happening. Because I think in the industry, obviously, it was known that consultation was going through over the last couple of years in AI with the government, and you saw some big names sort of stand up and say we don't want our work to be used blanket without any restrictions by AI. Right. Elton John and so on, and bosses in various media organizations such as Sky, but there's a balance to be had there as well, because the UK wants to attract AI developers, and it wants to foster an environment where developers see it as being a place that they'll be less hindered to be able to progress the tech, and achieve things that the tech obviously promises that it would achieve. And that balance is really hard to hard to strike, and it's not, for us as lawyers to say which side that balance should fall on. But it's definitely for all stakeholders something that we need to keep in mind. That on the one side, we want to encourage AI development and encourage AI development for the betterment of humans and the environment and business. But on the other hand, we've also got rights owners in the country who have and all over the world who have invested in, worked really hard to create something, whether that be a track in an album or a film, whatever they've created, they've had to invest both time and money going into that. So the idea in the UK at the moment is an exception to text and data mining to be able to train the AI, sort of Gen AI platforms and the large language models, which means that the AI companies will essentially be able to use those creations without a license or without permission. And I understand that scares a lot of people in the creative industries because they've put a lot of hard work into that stuff, and they're not going to get rewarded for the work of the AI platform.
Well, one thing that becomes clear, and I don't want you to stop your roll on that, but there's some salient points that came as a reflection to me. As we talk about the UK, we're really talking about also the global economy.
Yes.
And what has to happen here is countries, based upon their laws and how things are going to be managed, have to reinforce the growth of entrepreneurs and businesses, yet at the same time, they have to make sure that they're protecting them in this process. But it's a global economy thing.
Yeah,
it's not just about America or England, because we're universal in what we're doing with this technology. So I don't want to stop you, because you were getting deep there. Talk to me and please go on.
No, absolutely. And I think that's going to be the issue with AI regulation is if it's not harmonized, and this is, it's something to be seen also in piracy. If the laws aren't entirely harmonized, it's quite difficult for global business to look to enforce their rights because it's differing regimes within the different territories. So that becomes really confusing, complex, and high cost.
So the media transformation, which is worldwide, requires us to share as much information from law firms, from the government. And I'm thinking we're right now at the IBC 2025. We're at a media convention in Amsterdam, Netherlands. This would be a great forum, as we're sharing right now, to share this kind of information.
Yes.
People from all over the world to hear, and it allows us to share these thoughts. And we were at a forum this morning, which was wonderful. It was the meeting before the meeting. and people who are experts in their fields and executives and players in media in general. We're having a think tank. And it was sponsored by Advanced Television, which I want to give a shout out to Sanjeev. And I think key here is these kinds of conversations should be had with stakeholders, not only in the media, but the government and citizens, because then we can get buy-in from everyone. And this, when you go to implement the game book, it's a lot easier. You don't get protests in the middle of, whatever you decide to do. And it's a really important point, again, for Backstory and beyond. How do we bring the powers together? And honestly, there's no power greater in terms of humanity than the citizens who use the services.
For sure.
But there's a dedication that media has to, and the lawyers and the government, to sharing the truth, seeking the truth, and speaking power or truth to powers that be. But hey, man, look, I really enjoy this conversation. And we talked a little bit about IBC. How long have you been involved with IBC?
Well, actually, this is my first IBC, and I am.
You and I both.
Okay,
And I'm
yeah.
enjoying it thoroughly. Go ahead, please, sir.
No, absolutely. Me too. There's been a lot of interesting conversations, and actually, IBC was recommended to me by Sanjeev, that you mentioned from Advanced Television. He's obviously a veteran of the industry and has been here for many times over the years. And he asked me to join the roundtable, and actually, because AI is such a big topic at the moment, there I can, and IP obviously in the media industry has been a big topic obviously for decades. So there I thought I could add value. We act for various production houses in film and TV. And I have a lot of experience in the media and entertainment industry, so it just sounded like a good place to be. And I wasn't wrong, because both the sessions that both of us attended were super interesting. People with really diverse perspectives coming in from different angles, and for me to see how AI is being deployed, because that's what the conversation is usually in industry circles. It's more about how it's deployed to achieve efficiency, to meet creative goals that you couldn't meet before, and how to commercialize the technology. And that side of stuff is really interesting for me to see, because obviously from my side I'm just seeing the legal side, and the risks and the difficulties, and
it brings us to a point, and you described it so very, very well. The diversity of voices at the table in that mastermind meeting. That's the same diversity that needs to be in the C-suite, in the boardroom. For sure. People working, actually doing the work, so that they can bring a perspective that allows us to actually know what our customers are asking for. And that said, there's a mindset that's critical here. And it's one of saying, I think of abundance, for example, with AI, rather than scarcity.
Yes.
Because scarcity brings fear.
Yeah.
Fear brings actions that can be dangerous to the public and society.
Yes.
The abundance takes us to a way in which to say, how do we expand the pie using AI or whatever it might be? Any new thing, innovation, requires diverse groups of people to be involved.
Absolutely.
And so I'm bringing this back to your firm. When you look at it, what's its position on inclusion in their C-suite and the people working for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I absolutely agree. Diverse perspectives critical in any C-suite, any decision-making room, because there's real value to be had in a dissenting voice to yours, and particularly if that dissenting voice is coming from a different background, because there may be perspectives, conditioning, informing their perspectives that you may not have been exposed to in your lifetime. And having a diverse set of views around the table allows you to lean on some of those life experiences that you haven't had.
Which creates innovation.
Absolutely.
You can't have innovation without diversity and inclusion in this process.
For sure.
And so apply this then. I know you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are working with the London Chamber of Commerce in some form or fashion?
Yes.
Please tell us what that responsibility is, why it's important, any way you want to describe it, sir.
Yeah, no, the London Chamber is absolutely a very diverse community of businesses in London. It's a massive community of businesses in London. Has various sub committees within the organization as well, including the City of London Committee, the Black Business Association, and the Asian Business Association as well. all communities that have contributed a lot to London's business. London, like many cities around the world, is an absolute melting pot, and it wouldn't be what it is today without people coming in from all over the world and bringing in their perspectives from around. So the LCCI, I think, is really good at championing that, and is really good at being a voice for the London business community from various different angles. And it's, it makes its voice heard to government, and it tries to impact, policy conversations through that lens. So, yeah, for me, the LCCI is obviously a really important ambassador in that sense. Edwin Co as well, as I said, we have a focus on the way we do business, and the fact that we do business hopefully for greater good, other than just doing business for the sake of solely profit. Obviously, for any business, profit margins are an important thing to keep in mind.
But look, man, I'm just so delighted about your conversation, your conduct, and your character. And I'm not here to brown nose. My nose is brown enough. Okay. But my point to you is that when I'm listening to you discuss the London Chamber of Commerce and Co., what I hear is concerned citizenship. Here's a question. Either one that you choose to talk about, and you touched on it, but how does, for instance, the Chamber support in concrete ways diversity in the supply chain for any genre of business?
So, as I say, with the subgroups that the LCCI has, they're focused on the communities that they represent. So, the Asian Business Association or the Black Business Association, has regular meetings. They are aware of the various issues that the communities might be facing at any given time, and they collate these views in a way that is accessible to government and puts that across to them, and it also helps the business community in analyzing what's going on in the market at the moment, and really giving them the information that might help them in business. And it just helps people connect with each other as well as people, which is a really important thing in business. Sometimes we can be sort of always thinking of things as a means to an end, and seeking concrete opportunities, maybe without putting the legwork in or building those relationships. And the LCCI is a place where, you can make those connections. You can meet like-minded people. You can meet people from your community, from other communities, and really make meaningful connections. And where those connections offer collaborative opportunities in business, they absolutely encourage that and help facilitate that in any way that they can.
This is critical because your one sense of belonging really heightens when you can have a conversation and someone's listening.
Yes.
There's something powerful about listening. And you talked about the connectivity that comes with the Chamber for multiple communities. You meet people that are from your community, from other communities, and you can actually discuss getting better in that process. Supply chain is not easy, but if any community wants to grow, they need to be part of the supply chain. You and I were having a conversation about a woman in Texas who worked with Toyota for several years. It ended up after a while, she was building a component. They broke off a piece of business for her of the trucks they produce, and because they trusted her.
Yes.
Trust is important. You still got to verify, but trust is important. Yes. And so I just love where this conversation has gone, and primarily because of you, sir. You
And
know,
you. Yeah.
well, I enjoy it,
the work you
man,
do,
and
yes.
I hope
Yeah.
we don't stop here. I'm looking to. I visited the London Chamber of Commerce about the time the Olympics were going on. I jumped on a train, smooth ride, by the way, right over to London. I met the gentleman who was in charge of some things there. He's no longer there, but I think the bottom line is it was a good conversation, and I felt good walking in.
Yes.
It was hospitable. It was calm. It was down to earth. So I'd love to come and visit with you in St. G's,
Absolutely.
and maybe Reshma from the Supplier Development Organization in London.
Yeah.
And so these kind of things, they build bridges.
For sure.
And I think that there's a lot that I can learn from you. I'm just listening,
Sure.
and a lot of other
Likewise.
people too. So
Yeah.
I want to do a couple things as we come to a close, but we're not there yet. One is I want you to offer your reflections, and I'm putting the two questions on the table, about four things: calling, purpose, service to other people, and peak human potential. But the other is, I would be remiss not asking you if we missed anything that you think is important to talk about. And I just want you to have the floor to do that. So let's start with talking about your sentence or two based upon what calling is for you.
Yeah, calling is a difficult one to sometimes put your finger on, because I think it evolves as well throughout your life, right? You encounter opportunities, you go through life, and you might deviate your path at some point and reach a goal that you didn't even know you wanted 10 years ago. So being in the moment in life that I am in right now, I want to be the best lawyer I can be for my clients. I want to be the best colleague I can be for my colleagues. And I want to foster a open, inclusive, equitable, and diverse environment. And I want to work in an environment like that. And if I'm gonna want that stuff, I'm gonna have to embody it. I think that's my goal currently. What other opportunities come out of that, and whether that calling will morph and evolve over time is to be seen. But those are my current sort of goals.
Here's a reflection. The common denominator on everything you just said is being the best you can be in that moment, mindfully,
Absolutely.
in that moment.
Absolutely.
And I think that's powerful, sir. Let's switch gears and go on to the next one. Purpose. Purpose.
Purpose, I think, I think generally and very broadly, I want to have sort of a meaningful life, contributing to the betterment of people around me. And if I'm privileged enough, contributing positively to the wider public, and the public, not just where I live, but the global South. Back in my initial home in Sri Lanka, and what will always be my motherland. Purpose-wise, I'd like to be able to contribute to those things, and I think it's looking like it's possible through the prism of IP. So purpose-wise, I think, in summary, sort of meaningful relationships and a meaningful and positive net contribution to the people I'm surrounded by and the communities that I would like to impact.
I love it, sir. So, do you have a peak human potential?
I think, again, something that can evolve and morph. But I do think that, there are some things that are difficult to explain in terms of what, might achieve and you might reach, and sometimes it can feel like these things are written out somewhere in some way. I don't know where my peak potential lies. I try to be the best at what I do on a daily basis, and that doesn't mean that every day I wake up and I'm at 100% every day and smashing every day. But I try to approach things with purpose and try to do my best with how I approach those things, such that I'd hope that I'm moving towards peak potential. It's hard to put my finger on where that peak potential is specifically, but at the moment I'd hope it's somewhere in law, somewhere in IP law.
I did a story on a man named Gotham Chopra. He is the son of Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Yes. Okay.
And he is an award-winning filmmaker. His genre is to study iconic athletes.
Right.
And these athletes include people like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Simone Biles. Tom Brady is his partner, by the way, in something called the religion of sports.
Right.
And why I'm bringing this up, when you look at these athletes, they're a lot like what you just said. Their peak human potential on this day is different than it is tomorrow. But the one consistent common denominator, I've used that term twice, is the work they put in.
Absolutely.
And the smile, even when it hurts, that they have when they're shooting, throwing, running, lifting, in order to become their best. And that's what I hear you saying, sir. You're doing all of that in reference to becoming your best. Let's shift gears to the last one, and then go on to any final comments you have. What about service to people?
Yeah, I think very important for just satisfaction in life. Being able to approach a problem that could offer solutions, or you could offer solutions to, that could have wider benefit to people in the world. I think that's incredibly rewarding and incredibly satisfying to be able to do that, if you have the privilege of being able to do that. And I think you can do that in any role you're in and any job you're in, because, obviously it may vary the amount of impact that you're able to have by way of your role, but you can do it consciously in your workday, whether that is, approaching a particular legal problem in a way that takes into account all of the different people that the way you approach it might affect.
Yes, sir.
If I was writing to a defendant that, has very little, would not have the resources that my claimant client had, obviously we would act always to client instructions on things, but I try to be cognizant of these sorts of things when you're in an adversarial sort of situation, which is what court and dispute work in law is. You approach those things with compassion and empathize with the position that the person sitting across from the table is in. Obviously, this needs to be balanced against client objectives and the general cut and thrust of the case. But my example is simply to show that in any role you can sort of use your emotional intelligence, your empathy, and your compassion for people to check the impact that it may have on the wider public and your community and the people around you. And as I say, that this can vary not only from role to role, but this can vary from task to task, probably even within a role. But it doesn't mean to say that, we can't all think in those terms and think about the impact.
Understood. As we close, I want to give you the floor to share anything that we've missed. We've talked about so much. And again, I'm delighted just to hear your story and how it's evolving, because I want to watch it. As long as I'm living, I want to watch you just soar. And so God is a good God, and I think that there's a lot here. But anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about, anything at all?
No, we've covered so much, John, and thanks so much for having me. It's been such an interesting conversation throughout the IBC that we've had, and today on this program. But I think one of the things that struck me when you were talking about listening, I want to say a bit about that from my perspective. I've been in many rooms. I don't know if some of your viewers can relate to this, where you feel a bit singled out in terms of who you are, or particularly in my younger days. I would say continuing to this day, because often I can be the youngest person in the room, in addition to sometimes maybe being the only person of color in the room as well. And that can come with its baggage, in the sense that I will walk into the room with a point to say or discuss and have some value to contribute, but not necessarily feel I am able to share that in certain spaces, or I wouldn't. Particularly when I was younger, I think it's less of an issue at the forefront of my mind now. But I would listen and soak it in, and hear everyone else speak. And sometimes, some people might be much louder in the room than others. I just wanted to say, for those people that are the silent participants in the room, I don't think they should be perceived as not having value. It's about the leadership then in those rooms being able to extract is probably the wrong word, because we're not taking the value
Yes,
from.
Sir. I get it.
But facilitating the sort of sharing of that value. And it's about the leadership being able to make the whole group realize that diverse perspectives are important, that, how that manifests itself in business or in, government or whatever is beneficial to the whole. Without those voices, we might be one-track minded and siloed, and pigeonholed. So I felt, walking into a room and feeling intimidated. I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. I'd like to give those people sort of courage to say that your voice is important, and we want to hear what you have to say. But I'd also like to say to leaders to facilitate that and encourage that, and maybe sometimes help the silent person in the room speak up.
I think what you're saying is so powerful. In order to influence people to become their best, that's the synonym of leadership.
Absolutely.
You have to be aware of what they're experiencing.
Absolutely.
And what I heard you say is sometimes leaders they're paying attention to a goal, but not understanding the process gets you to the goal.
For sure. That's
like saying, I don't have to train, it's just practice. No, yeah. you got to do it. And you got to be engaged meaningfully in the moments that someone like you or me feels off put. Now, we can fight through that, but we shouldn't have to.
No.
That's unnecessary. You talked about baggage.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary baggage.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, let's
Yeah.
find a way to bring the best out of people. And see, I wrote an article recently on the transformation of the media industry. And in that, one subsection is what leaders really should be. And it talks about this kind of thing. Now, it talks about other things like inclusion. It talks about how you look at your KPIs, your measurements. It talks about making sure you're almost a band leader because there is no wrong note unless you do something with it afterwards. It makes it wrong in jazz.
Yeah.
Now, you have to stick to what the game plan is, but at the end of the day, sir, this point you make is as important as anything we talked about. Leadership has to lead, has to influence the bringing the best out of people. They say you plant the seed, you water it, make sure it's in good soil. God takes care of the rest. He causes the increase, but you have to do those things.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
brother, look, I had such a great time here, and let's not make this the last time.
For sure.
I see this being a couple different shows that are meaningful, highlighting what you're doing. This issue of the law and IP and AI and all of the things that go along with media, people need to know about it.
Absolutely.
If legislation is going on that is going to hurt an entrepreneur, if legislation is going on that the public needs to know about, we need to create these forums either at IBC, wherever it is, to have those discussions like the ones we were in.
Absolutely.
You know, the mastermind. And so, look, I appreciate you. I'm looking forward. Good show, sir. Good show.
Thanks so much.